You know, everybody always says it's so easy for you, Jake. You got in at Bitcoin in your first bull run, round about sub $20,000, $17,000, $18,000 in late 2020, and Ethereum at $400. And the reality is, you know, that's always a point people will make, because I wish I was one of the guys that had the balls in the C19 whoopsie doopsie that were also buying Bitcoin, you know, around about $3,000, $4,000 mark, and ETH at $100. And those guys were lucky, right? Just like some people were saying I was lucky buying in 2020 when Bitcoin was at these prices. And the truth is, when we see stuff like this, is you always get in at the price you deserve. You know, you buy X coin at the price you deserve, right? The price you decide, when you look at that, is that's the price you decide, okay, well, this is maybe enough for me to make good money or potentially change my life. And we always look at this if we go back on Amazon, right? I share this many, many times on some of my live streams that we do on now Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If I look at this on the monthly, Amazon stock, right? The early stock, the stock that, you know, is too late to buy. If you go back into the year when most of us were maybe babies, not even born, the older guys, you know, probably 20-year-olds, whatever, Amazon went from pretty much nothing all the way up to $5, right? And then it would crash all the way down to 28 cents. And pretty much the harsh reality of this is 28 cents. You know, people will say, oh, you got on Amazon so early, and you compare this to cryptocurrency coins. Well, no, these guys decided to buy when shit was hitting the fan. You know, you look at Amazon stock, for example, down 95%. Would you buy an altcoin that went down 95%? Not a lot of people would. Let's just be honest. We'd probably buy Bitcoin. We'd love that. We'd probably buy Ethereum. We'd love that. We'd probably buy XRP, HBAR, ADA, etc. But some of these more risky coins, e.g. risky companies back in the day like Amazon when they were just a baby, not a lot of people were able to take that risk reward. And that's when we always so go back to you got in so lucky. And that is just the harsh reality, is you get in at the price you deserve. And the title of this video might scare you a little bit when I say you're about to lose everything, okay? I don't necessarily mean that, but I'm speaking to those guys out there that are flip-flopping right now. The harsh reality is it usually takes one cycle completely to fucking change your life, but also it usually takes a cycle for you to fuck up and realize whatever you've done. Excuse my French there, but that's just the harsh reality. In 2020 and 2021, when people were saying that we got in cryptocurrency so early, well, that was true compared to obviously 2017 and 2013 when those got in early, but we completely effed it up. Guess what? The title of this video was true for me. I didn't know it at the time, but I was about to lose everything in the span of a year's time. Like literally everything, having to rebuild again. And people are saying that I'm doing that right now. The time will tell. But usually in cryptocurrency or any business model, you have to fail a bunch of time. You have to have sleepless nights, have your mom and your dad, your girlfriend. My girlfriend back in the day was very supportive of me, God bless her soul, but everybody else was not supportive of me. They were not supportive at all. They just thought this was very, very risky. And they're right, it was very, very risky. But you have to lose everything most of the time with cryptocurrency and most vehicles to learn the mistakes. And then what you do is you implement them for the next cycle. Because again, when I talk about you're about to lose everything, my harsh reality, it didn't really kick in until 2022. 2020, 2021 cycle was absolutely fantastic. I remember vividly in my hometown, Glasgow, Scotland, I had a small group of guys. I've always shared this before, but pretty much guys with me and 3 other guys in a WhatsApp group. Me, Dean, Billy, and a guy called G that we used to call him. He was a lot older than us, but the difference between G compared to me, Dean, and Billy was the older guy. He had already had a cycle in 2017. Okay, and that story is going to be very important because he thought we were moon boys and he was trying to coach us and say, hey, you're up a lot of money. Like I took pretty much over $100,000 to about 950K, almost reaching that 7-figure bracket. And I was still a moon boy. You know, Bitcoin had to go to 100K. Ethereum had to go to 10K. HBAR had to go to $1 to $4, whatever people were saying back then. And I remember so fucking vividly, G would say to us in this group chat, because he lost everything in 2017, just take profits, Jake. Just take profits, Dean. Billy, just take profits. And, you know, day after day, we ignored him, and on paper, we were right. It continuously started to go up. We had that big whoopsie doopsie when Bitcoin went from 64K to about 30K, but we continually went back up. And it looked like we were right. Okay, and by then he was starting to scale out 20% along the way. He'd have a little moon bag, like he'd ultimately ride down, but he took about 80% out, and he made, you know, a couple of $100,000, which to him was a lot of money. And for us, when I reached the 950K, I just remember just thinking, I need to hit the 3 million. I need to hit the $1 million status. And even if it was just 1 million, I guarantee I wouldn't have taken profits. It would have been the 2, it would have been the 3. It wouldn't even have mattered what happened because I thought Bitcoin, like many newbie investors back then thought it was going up forever. And yeah, the point is you experience pain and failure from fucking up in your first cycle, from fucking up in your first business, from fucking up the first time you go to the gym, from fucking up the first time you try and speak to a girl. It's always the same. And then it hits you hard to the point where G was saying pretty much, you know, he was that guy in 2017 for him. He was like, yep, these guys will learn. And then he was going to basically see how much of men we were to come back in the cycle. Now, we all got back in the cycle in 2023, 2024. Haven't heard from Billy yet. Don't know what he's doing. But me, Dean, and G, we're in the cycle. But we know what euphoria feels like. And if you've not felt that yet because the market's looking pretty shit, let's just be honest, the 4-year cycle might be invalid. Sure, whatever. You just have to be prepared to either ride this or hold it for longer. But just remember, altcoins is risky. Very, very risky if you're in some riskier coins down the market. So the goal we always say, excluding that title, is the goal should be to get to that next bracket of wealth, okay? Cross that next level, slay that next dragon. And what I mean by that, you know, for the guy that has, you know, trying to rip a 10K trade to $1 million, the reality of that is you're skipping 2 graphics. You're at a 5-figure portfolio and you're trying to go to a 6 and then jump to a 7-figure portfolio. And that's usually not how it's going to happen. The odds are significantly stacked against you. We always say, if you have the 4 figures, get to the 5 figures. If you have the 5 figures, get to the 6 figures. If you have the 6 figures, get into the 7 figures. Here's the thing that nobody seems to understand these days. These returns, all the time, it's the same multiplier. Okay, so for example, if you have a $10,000 trade and you are doing a 10x, you make 100 grand. If you have $1 million and you make the same return, the difference is you turn the 1 million into 10 million. Massive difference, same return. And the best quote I can ever think about is Charlie Morgan. He basically says the first $100,000 is a bitch, but what you got to do is you got to go and get it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating, that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on that first $100,000. And after that, you can sort of ease yourself off the gas if you're smart. The reason though, because of that quote and why it sticks home with me so much, is that first $100,000 is so important, because once you reach this threshold, e.g. the 6 figures, and that might be a long way from some of you guys with, you know, a couple $1,000s in your portfolio, $20,000, $30,000 in your portfolio. But remember, when you get to that level, and I promise you, you will get there, the compound interest begins to work significantly in your favor, especially if you're him investing in the stock market, and your money starts to generate significant returns and creating that snowball effect. Again, back to crypto. The guy does a 10x on a 1K to a 10K, congratulations. He does very, very well. He makes $9,000. But the guy that does the same 10X on a 100K portfolio to $1 million, he makes 900K. Okay, same trade, same effort, same everything, bar the initial 100K. Okay, one makes enough money for maybe 2 to 3 months of his life. The other makes enough money to probably set up his life forever. That's the difference. So the biggest problem with making money in crypto is the money doesn't feel real, okay, till it hits your bank account. Because when I looked at my 2021 bull run, I remember the initial 100K that I took out of my bank account from my dropshipping days when I was running a lot of stores. That definitely felt real, to just take out 6 figures. Now, it wasn't in one chunk. It was 20K, 20K, 15K, whenever I felt like I could buy. But when it grew to 950K, almost a 10X, it just felt like meh, because it wasn't really real. It wasn't money in my bank account. It was just like, okay, I've got some Bitcoin. It's on the screen. You know, it just didn't feel real. And to be honest, that money would have probably at that time completely changed my life and my family's life, and I wouldn't have to go through the stress that I had to go through in 22 of losing it all. But again, it was just some internet coins back then. And that's the problem with cryptocurrency, is it doesn't feel real, at least to me. Even now, you know, my portfolio of almost $1 million, because the market's taking a dip, kind of not learned that lesson yet, which is kind of annoying, because I know $1 million in the bank account looks a lot different than 20 different altcoins and some Bitcoin. Just the way it is. It's almost like compared to, you know, when it would have been cash, like imagine $1 million in cash. It would feel pretty real if I had it on this table. It would honestly feel pretty real. And it would give you such a different feeling. Okay, so just remember the game that we're in. Okay, and that game is real life money we are dealing with. And for a lot of us, it's not just about us. It's we're retiring your mum, not having to have her work, her shitty job anymore, your dad, your grandparents, etc., maybe your future wife, your kids, if you're younger. It's about losing everything. It's not just you. Chances are you maybe have a family. A lot of our guys are older that watch this channel. Maybe you're a girl and you have a husband. Maybe you have some kids. Maybe you have a dog. It's not just your life on the risk here. It's important that you treat this very carefully. So again, point number 6 I want to kind of make is you're either in this or you're not. And that's just the reality. And that's the only reason I got back in 2023 after losing everything. Because I could have easily left and been like, oh, crypto's a scam. I lost everything. But the only reason I stayed in the game is because I've seen what happened on paper. I've seen that 100K turn into 950K. I watched it, remember vividly the highs, the lows, the top of the 50, the 60K to the 50%, Ethereum getting crashed, HBAR getting crashed, XRP not doing its thing, Celsius going down. I remember all of that. And the reality is, the caveat is true also. Most people, what they do is they buy tops and sell bottoms. And it's just in the wrong game if you're doing that, to be 100%. Generational wealth in cryptocurrency comes from the opposite mindset. And again, the other thing I always say with cryptocurrency is, if you're a small player, and that doesn't mean to be rude, but if you are a guy, let's just say with $50,000 or less, by the way, it's a lot of fucking money, let's be honest. You're not a small player to me, but that's just, what I want to put in this point is, if you invest that 50K or 10K or 5K in the S&P, make your little 10% with your little 7% net inflation, that's fine. But it actually is a lot less if you factor in real inflation, houses, the price of Bitcoin going up, the price of altcoins, like the stuff that you really want to buy. It's not just 3% inflation. It's not even food anymore. Like, the harsh reality is the S&P probably barely keeps up with 10% compared to inflation. If you're talking about the stuff you want to buy, the Lambos, the houses, the yachts, the experiences, the holidays, the plane tickets. That's the way I calculate inflation, because I don't look at the price of an apple and think, oh yeah, well, the inflation's only 3%. It was £1 and now it's £1.03. That's not the way I look at it. If I'm looking at a flight to Thailand and it's, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, and now it's $2,000, $4,000, inflation was 100% of flights, okay? Take that into consideration. It's obviously not correct maths, but it's not just 3% when I look at the stuff I'm actually buying and you probably want to buy. And then you look at real estate compared to the S&P. It's like you can leverage this against a bank, but let's be honest, you can't really buy a shed for less than $100,000 in London. Plus, I don't want to play the tenant game. I've been there, done that. I'm managing tenants. Even though toilet breaks, the tenant decides not to pay. Somebody's always going to be like, well, get a tenant manager, Jake. I've been there, done that. Nothing happened. It was still stress. And again, this just comes back to cryptocurrency. With your businesses or your 9 to 5, whatever, the only other option there is crypto. That's why we're watching this video. That's why we're playing this game. That's why I'm making this video. It's open 24/7. You get to decide how you want to play the game. It's player versus player. It's very fair. There's no other game out there. Yes, Donald Trump can put out a tweet, manipulation with USA, US shutdown, I get that. But this is player versus player. At the end of the day, this is player versus player. You don't have to do leverage trades. You can be a spot holder and just play the longer game. Risk management strategies and learn the game. You can take a small amount of money, let's just be honest, and completely change your life in a year. Seen it happen so many fucking times. I've also seen it happen another way. Big amount of money turns into a small amount of money. You don't want to be that guy. The biggest lessons I want to give you in 2021, so you don't lose it all and you don't be the guy that looks at this title and actually becomes that statistic like we had to do in 21, is if you hit your goals, take profits. Again, I always talk about this. We've got some guys doing trades in our group. And this is just about trades here. You take this back to HODL strategy, okay? But I'm just going to talk about trades because it's a lot easier to show this, because most of our profits haven't been hit in Bitcoin yet. 140, 150K hasn't happened, but I can show you this. So there was a guy in our group, TJ, and he was up a 10x in 2 days. And you can see here, Peanut just absolutely ripped. He took his profits and he absolutely crashed his chart for a good way or for a bad way. But he took his profits. It's player versus player, and that's what he did. Another legendary trade that I was talking about heavily when I started this video in my podcast right here was November kind of 24, 20th, whatever, with a guy here called Bobby that pretty much ripped a small amount of money into over 200K in profit. Absolutely crazy. He didn't cause this dump, I would say, because this was a very high market cap back here. But, guess what? He had his limit targets, he had his goals, etc. And he ripped a 200K trade on an absolute shitcoin. Again, another one bullish for Bobby again. He read this up. He took his profits out. And he took initially 5K out and he's letting the rest run. So if it goes to shit, it doesn't really matter. So when I say you hit your targets, I'm not just talking about specifically Bitcoin, etc., etc. If you're doing some trades, if you hit your targets, get out the game. You've done your job, okay? Do not chase hype. And you got to stick to fundamentals. So many people chase hype and flip-flop from their blue chips, your Bitcoin, etc., the Solana, the Ethereum, the XRP, the BNB, to whatever shit that usually goes wrong. You remember Trump coin. I was speaking to a guy, Marcus, another guy that's here in Thailand that does some business in Australia, and they live out here. Basically what happened was they ditched all their blue chip coins and bought the peak of Trump, the absolute peak of Trump. He was telling us at the gym, and I was like, we were laughing. It's funny now. It wasn't a lot of money, but he sold some of his blue chip assets, that he wished he never did that. And he rode it all the way back down. How many times have we seen that? So it's very important. Again, you do not need to be a Bitcoin maxi in this channel. I don't really care what you hold. I just want you to make money and have a good life. That's really it. Have some riskier altcoins, a small percentage, but especially right now in the market, you're bleeding bad. That's just reality. Like 3 times compared to Bitcoin. So cover all risks in the best possible way is very important. There's only really 5 options that happens from here if you're covering your risk, right? Whether you can weather a storm and let it ride on the downside, okay? So again, we always talk about this. It's very, very simple. Option 1 is we're going into a bear cycle, okay? Very, very simple. That would be option number 1. Option 2, below off top, fast as F by the next 2 months. I don't know what's going to happen, by the way. I'm hodling regardless. Option 3, the 4-year cycle is broken, and then we get Q1, Q2 2026 is when the peak is. Option 4, sideways, nothing but small pumps and dumps. And then option 5, you always talked about this, the business cycle. We slowly just keep going up like the S&P, but maybe a little bit more money on Bitcoin. Some altcoins will rock, etc. alongside that, but there's just gradual increases and mini dips. Don't really know what's going to happen. Nobody does. And if they tell you they do, I guarantee they're wrong because nobody knows. And everybody changes their mind on YouTube all the time in Chris Crypto Niche. It drives me fucking crazy. Little bonus tip. Stay emotionally disciplined, okay? You have to stop the daily portfolio checks, okay? It will absolutely wreck your mind to the point that you check it 5 to 10 times per day, and it will completely change how you feel, literally just by opening up CoinMarketCap, your Binance Exchange, Coinbase, etc. And you're just going to completely feel differently, depend if it's a green day or a red day. I remember this vividly. I would have this little routine back in the day, check it. 2 times I went to go and poo, 1 time after the shower, 1 time I spoke to my girlfriend at the gym, multiple times per day, and I was either feeling good when I was doing a poo, and then by the time the gym came, it was maybe red that day, and I felt like shit. Emotionally disciplined, cannot check your portfolio like that. And yeah, hopefully you found some value in this video. Hopefully you can share this with a friend that needs it. I made this video for you, so I'd really appreciate a like and a support. And yeah, stay emotionally disciplined, guys. It's difficult out there, but I believe in you, believe in yourself, and let's keep going strong.